Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Auxiliary Channel of Education. When the students reach a good fluency level, it's time to ask ourselves, what else we need to perfect and learn and how to structure our classes in order for them to keep progressing and perfecting their language learning. Is it a matter of providing more and more content, vocabulary, same grammar, different structures? Or should we adjust our planning to make sure we're not missing anything they should know to be proficient in any communicative process? Today, we'll be discussing this and other questions about teaching high-level students. We have Graham Bell in Malaga, Matt Hammond and Gabriela Pinto in Madrid, Anna and Rob Wiley here in Barcelona, and my name is Carlos Fong, and let's get started. So, Rob.
Yes.
Do you like teaching high-level students?
I do. I mean, I like teaching all levels, so I'm not going to say that I specifically just enjoy high levels. I like, all of them. I know lots of teachers tend to say that they prefer just teaching the higher levels because it's easier, let's say. But yeah, I enjoy across the board. I do like the fact that you can have a bit of a debate. You can play devil's advocate a bit more than when you're with a lower level, like a beginner. And you can have a bit of a discussion, a bit of a chat. But I enjoy introducing kind of the new vocabulary, etc., complicated structures, this type of thing. So yeah, I enjoy it. Yourself?
I do as well, thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, I enjoy teaching high-level students. I think they are well, they can be challenging too, no? I think we need to don't forget that the challenge is part of teaching someone with a high level because they have a lot of vocabulary. And so you need to find perhaps different phrases, perhaps different modes, slang to teach them.
That's what I say when I said people say it's easy to teach a high level because they think it's just a case of going in and chatting to someone, and that's not the case at all. So
we don't only go there and we talk about how the weather today and like what have you done last week again.
Right.
So we need to challenge ourselves and prepare the class in a way that the student will learn something. So it's not just conversation and practicing, which is one of the points that we think we have to do in order to improve accuracy and fluency. But I guess we also have to find something different, to teach them.
Right. And Graham, what do you think what are the expectations of a student with a higher level of English? What do you think they expect from us?
Well, I expect from them is the mastering of all of the tenses. Certainly if they're at that kind of higher, what we call P4 and P5, which is basically what B2 and C1. And we kind of would expect them to have a master of the tenses and be able to have a vast vocabulary. But we're then wanting to challenge them on their cohesive devices and see what they can actually do. I mean, I think at that level, I often find students are always saying, for example, alternative ways for them to say things. That's why I find them so challenging, because they can communicate. It's just a bit repetitive, they've only got this function, the same way to function something, they don't have any, you've just got to challenge the vocabulary of it.
I think that is true, Graham. I think that, you hear the same thing over and over again. It is our job to try to think of another way to express that idea, that thinking.
In fact, I had a P5 student yesterday. It was only our second class together, and she said exactly that. She says, she speaks next to perfect English, but she said, I'm just using the same words all the time. So we're focusing the classes specifically on looking at synonyms and different ways to say stuff and just perfecting, and bettering that part of her language.
Right, and going back to the challenging part, that can be challenging to think of a synonym on the spot. That's when we have use our tools like Google. What is a synonym for this word?
I mean, but look, I guess if you're looking for synonyms and that type of thing, it's not bad to actually put it in and go over some of the synonyms that you can find on Google, and look at, and try to challenge them to then start using them words.
Yeah. And Gabriela, what about correcting? How do we correct people with a high level when their grammar is good and their pronunciation and fluency is good? How do we correct it? What do we correct?
Well, I think for me, it's as you guys have touched upon. So understanding the language, I have high-level students that say, this is very good, this is very bad. And I'll go, what are other words you can use? And then when it comes to correcting them, a lot of the time you're probably going to be correcting habitual mistakes, which are very difficult to get rid of in a high level student. Most of the time they already know that they're making those mistakes, but it's to remind them of that. When it comes to actually correcting them in a class, it depends. Sometimes if I'm on a topic activity and I'm asking a question, I'm correcting things that they've done incorrectly after that question, or I might correct them in the moment if I feel like it's something that is just small and they already.
Right. Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Gabriel is right. Again, with each student will be a different kettle of fish. As far as the synonym thing, often you can throw in an idiom, like you say something, you say, oh, you've got an idiom for that. You know what that is?
Yeah.
That's another way of challenging them.
Yeah, I think you have a good point. I think even though they may have a good fluency and pronunciation, idioms is where they most have a lack of understanding or lack of knowledge on idioms. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, sorry.
Or a phrasal.
Yeah,
Phrasal
that's what I
verbs,
was going to say as well. Exactly. Yeah.
Some slang too.
Some slang,
Slang,
kind of this
phrasal
type of
verbs,
thing.
idioms. I think they always could use more of that. No.
Yeah.
All right. So how do we make sure what exactly students know and don't know in order to provide that information to them? Do we have some options? Like keep a notebook, a diary. Is that one way of doing that? When we have different students, what tools can we use to try to learn that?
The system in the first place, right? So we use a system because we can evaluate each student in a group whether the material was acquired or not. So even if it's a high level, right? So and we know that they are quite fluent and accurate when speaking, but when it comes to the activity, and sometimes some of them are better or have more knowledge in some point than the others. So then we put the right face to those who don't, and then next time we'll work more on this information with this particular student. So the system is one of the things that we use in a group class and individual class in order to evaluate. And also, I mean, carrying a notepad is good. Sometimes I do it as a traditional thing, instead of blackboard, but sometimes I need just to write down the word and the spelling. But I guess we can test them too, to understand whether they understand the topics. We don't have to go through all the activities. We can test them, asking questions or debating and things like that.
Right, and on the tool we have a notepad for each individual student where we can actually
write a note.
We can write a note. We can say, we cover this topic or this phrasal verb, like you said, or this idiom. We need to work additional in some other things. But also in the system, they're working in improving, so we can insert more data into the system so that we know what activity has been covered. So we'll have more help that way. Yeah. What other tools do you use, Graham?
Well, when I'm doing the topic, really likes to teach. Often they've got a little subpart on them, and this is when I find I can really work with the cohesive devices. I've got a chart here. Actually, I'll post it up on the YouTube link after. I'll list sort of 6 cohesive devices or certainly functions, and they're adding, sequencing, illustrating, and so on and so forth. And it's when you get the student talking to you and they're doing the activate part that you can really see where they're kind of what they use, and then you can challenge it. So an example would be and you maybe want to try and get them to use moreover or furthermore or in addition.
Right.
And if it's sequencing and they're doing then you can introduce like subsequently or mean, try and develop those skills with them. Those are the things when the student's talking, when you get that freer practice. That's when I start looking at going, how are they actually joining things together? Are they just really basic? Because at that higher level, they're wanting to jump from just being able to communicate, which they can do at B2, into like professional or getting close to native level speaking. And to do that, they need to have much more than, for example, an and then.
Yeah.
Right.
Complex linking words, I guess, and connectors.
Yeah.
Not like so and
Yeah.
but much more complex than that.
So do we need more, create more activities based on that feedback that you have, Graham? Activities specifically for connectors, complex connectors, joining sentences. What?
We have
Yeah.
we have them in the grammar,
Mhm.
but you need to make sure that, so for example, when you have grammar activities come up in your list of activities to do, is you don't necessarily always have to teach every grammar, but if you observe that the student's using them, then notify the system, let the computer know. You can rate that activity whether you teach it or not, and if you've seen them use that, if they can demonstrate a use of that grammar, sign off so that they then get something that they.
Mhm.
I think that's something that's happening is maybe when you look at your activities, you go, the student knows how to do all this. I'm not going to teach it. Well, just sign off if you know they know how to do it.
Yeah.
Like, make sure you're getting challenging stuff for them.
Right. And Gabriel, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think with more advanced students, prepared and stuff, well, arguable, but you have to be doubly prepared. For example, I have a student who wants conversation classes, and we walk in zero for an hour, and we talk. I know before that class, okay, we're going to touch on these prepositions, this kind of grammar, and because they're advanced, you could say things, for example, okay, describe to me what is like, right? And within that description, I know that I'm touching on all the prepositions that I need to for that activity. But you have to definitely be prepared, because the more fluent they are, the quicker they will get through the said activities, and the more activities they will already be able. So preparation is absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Another thing students have a question is, how long do they go from a beginner student to from S1, P2 to a P4, P5 level? No, typically traditional approaches tell us about 10 to 13 years, but with our systems like ours, with modern approaches, we're looking at about three years or so. 3 to 4 years. Is that Rob? Is that what you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking when you mentioned that, I was thinking about a student that I did have a couple of years back, and he quickly went through from a P2 to quite a beginner level right through to P5 in a year and a half, 2 years, and he put a lot of effort in class and did watch series and did study, and he was always Googling synonyms, and he loved phrasal verbs and all that. So he was quickly went through the levels, and he was very motivated to do that, not for his work, but he just wanted to learn English, and so I think
it's brilliant. I mean, with the students like this, they are really motivating other students to do that.
Yeah.
You can give also an example of students who learned English within half a year, but upon a condition, he was studying after each class for 5 hours more by himself.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we?
What do you guys say to a student who has been studying English their whole school, and they just feel like they are never going to get anywhere, and they're bored and they are fed up with English, and they just, when am I actually going to
Graham, what do we say?
There's my bus. Yeah, I actually have heard that from friends more specifically than students. And what I always say to them is it's not because of the amount of learning it's the amount of practice. So, there's only so much we can do as a classroom. If a student really wants to learn, then they need to take the skills from the classroom and integrate them into their lives. So one of the things that I really like the way we teach is that we're teaching functions and we're teaching survival skills to use in their. And as teachers, we're all adapting and thinking, I need to give you something you're going to use. If it's in their business or at home, if you're teaching a couple, and teach them how to whatever it is you're doing, but give them some sort of skill, because it's the using it out with the time with us that gets them there. I think it's something like 5,000 to acquire a proficiency, like a native proficiency. So I would presume 3,500 is your kind of, you can communicate. So that's a lot of hours in a week. So you need to make sure that they're using it when they're not with you. So I think that's the benefit of our system, is we teach them skills and then we encourage them to produce out with classroom.
Right. Rob?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the same. Like, I've had kind of students who have said to me, like, oh, I feel like I'm not progressing, but they're literally coming to English for an hour a week and that's it. And they kind of, they don't make any kind of extra
Right.
effort almost. They won't study the vocabulary before, they don't study it after, they don't, and so it's like, why am I, they're finding it slower, they're progressing, but just slower, obviously, and maybe they see someone else who progresses faster, but that person is putting in a bit of extra hours rather than just an hour a week. I think it's just a case of kind of, if a student is getting a bit unmotivated, you just gotta keep giving them a bit of motivation. I think we've all learned or are learning second languages, so it's a case, we've all been in that situation and feeling how they're feeling. So I think just giving them a bit of encouragement as well.
And to show them how much they know already.
Yeah, that's it as well.
Yeah,
if you think like
they know
some
something.
classes I rotate with teachers, and so I go back to a class maybe 4 or 5 months after.
Yeah.
And you can see the difference, and so giving a bit of encouragement, like, guys, think about how you were at Christmas, and look what you're telling me now, and look at that difference.
Exactly.
And that's not just for lower levels either. That can also be for the higher levels as well. If you,
Right.
kind of double checking what you've done the week before, but asking questions and getting them to use the phrasal verbs and this type of thing, and just showing them actually you're making progress. Just keep going.
Yeah.
And Matt, how do we encourage that student that because they do it every day, they do it every hour, 1 hour a week, or maybe 2 hours a week. They feel they're not progressing, but they have progressed. How do we show them? How do we encourage them?
No, I think it's a lot of it, like you said, is about motivation. You can again test them. Again, coming back, if you kind of repeat the idiom maybe once a week with them, that idiom is going to sit in their head. They're going to know that idiom after a month. So then when you go in there, when they're frustrated, you can say to them, hey, you're not as bad as you think you are.
Yeah.
I think the frustration thing is like quite a human sensation. So
I think-
like they know more than what they think they know.
Yeah.
I think that's a big motivator.
So, Matt, I know you do things in your, but that sounds like you take just their failures, but their achievements as well.
Yeah.
So you can.
Yeah, and again, it comes like repetition.
Yeah.
If it's a phrasal verb, look, a lot of the phrasal verbs, they know them, but a difficult one, you drum it into their, it's going to sit in their head, and eventually they'll start using that, and they'll realize that they're not as bad as they think.
Right.
Cool.
And let's talk about the class dynamics now. What should be the pace of a class of a high level?
Much
What do you
faster. I think much faster, more natural. Also, we were discussing with teachers before that we have to speak in a way that we speak to our friends sometimes, not just using the perfect BBC language.
It's quite hard to do that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I've had groups where they've said, just speak to me like you're chatting to your friends, and then it's quite difficult because you're in the classroom environment, and it's like but that's sure.
Yeah, definitely faster, definitely more natural, and definitely using their phrase like eating some endings, So,
We're kind of going on from that. Like, there is a question about how do we stage our class for high levels. So, is there any specific tip for like the order of activities or the timing, that type of thing? You guys, any ideas?
I don't know about order. Definitely got a common grading. So we're saying to them more truly, but if we talk to them, like basically, I probably taught in general at a B with my friends. But if you want to get them to C1 and C2, and it's more business orientated, so if you actually want them to mimic you, if we're constantly saying to them and for example, they're only going to and for example, we have to be very careful with our language grading and make sure that we are using higher level English when we talk to them, so they mimic and copy. Because if we don't, then they're just going to be like, oh, this is fine. If Graham just says example, then I'm just going to use example.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So we got to keep on doing that too. That's an important point of planning your higher level classes. Is you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, so we had one about how quickly students have gone from kind of a P2 to a P5 level, so to advanced. I said I had this example of about 1.5 years, 2 years. I don't know if anyone else has got any examples that you've had students who've kind of quickly gone through levels.
I haven't. I don't have any.
who've gone quickly through the
Quickly.
levels. But yeah, but I mean, it's possible. Like I say, in a couple of years, it's very very
I
achievable, very
have
possible.
one currently that is it started in S1, and we've been working for a few months, and we're actually progressing.
Quickly.
We're making sentences,
Yeah.
and he's actually telling stories, and he's able to. But that's been a slow process.
Yeah.
But I only had him for a few months, so we're still working on.
Still going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. And isn't that a good feeling, right? You know, when you see a student you can work with.
And I'm always telling him, you realize that you just made a thought, a sentence, a full, complete sentence in English, you know, and it's surprising.
Yeah. Okay, what about what are some of the most challenging things that we find? We mentioned maybe about introducing, but how do we keep students interested? So like if we have a student that kind of maybe thinks that they know more or less everything, how do we keep them coming back for more?
Showing them what they don't know.
Yeah.
It's obvious that.
I think also a lot of activities have reading materials, and a lot of people that may think they know English quickly realize by reading that they don't know everything.
Yeah.
You know? Or in videos.
Yeah.
There's do a lot of the TED Talk videos and just regular speech and
I think like listening is a skill that we kind of also have to continuously work on, because I have students who have got a very, very high level, but they still struggle with, you know, listening skills, whether that is a video or just me. So I think we need to kind of also keep, you know, keep practicing their listening skills. Of course, we want students to be speaking as much as possible, but it's also just as important for them to be practicing their listening. I don't know if you guys, sorry, Madrid, I think I maybe cut across you earlier, if you guys had anything to add.
I think it's always just keeping them challenged, you know, so they can string a sentence together at a high level, but what if it's a spontaneous situation? So you create scenarios. One teacher mentioned the side, which creates complex problem solving. And that's a completely different kettle of fish when you actually have in complicated terms in English. So just making sure. Also, I think using the element of surprise as well is really good, because you mentioned that, Matt, was like in a language, yes, you're fluent, you can have a conversation, but there are certain conversation patterns that you know how to respond. What happens if the situation isn't like that?
I think that's the danger of that the student is in control and they'll just keep it where they want it. You know, I think an answer to get you guys' opinion too, but like someone asked earlier, that question about the pattern that we do, how we lay out class, and I think every teacher does it differently. I mean, you can start with grammar activities to challenge them. You know, you can almost look to your class if you want at the start and say, hey, look, this is what we can do today. Because I think the trigger of the computer syllabus, you know, that's the most learning point. Vocabulary is quite varied, and topics can cover quite a lot of levels. But it's the grammar that we to teach. Because I find, sorry, what are you saying?
So Graham, you're talking about how do we improve prepared activities, for high level students. I think that's very important, because we are improving activities, we are making activities. So what is the difference between a P4 and a P5? How do we focus? What is a focus for a high level student?
It's just more. It's when English is common. It's more academic. You'll probably find that most native speakers would struggle with a C2 exam because it starts to get more towards first year university English in terms of how you form things, because it's starting to use a different person to express. So you're not always saying this. It gets to that level and the grammar becomes more complicated. I think one of the ones I've seen recently was using the past continuous to talk about future events. You know, I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
You know, it's those sort of things that start to get in the kind of P4, P5 level. But I think it's making sure that you teach them and talk. You know, there's nothing worse than spending a whole class making errors because you don't know what. You'd rather make a mistake because I've forgotten something and constantly be feeling I have gaps in my knowledge with my team. And me as a teacher,
and I think you touched upon earlier taking back the control, because if we start a conversation with a high level student, they own the stage, and we need to direct them back.
Back.
You know?
Yeah,
And
to
that's-
control them a bit.
and that can be complicated. What are some of your ideas, Gabriela, to do that, to take back control?
Well, I think that to a higher level student, it's always a bit of a give and a take, but if I feel a student needs to work on something, the kinds of questions that I ask in the class, I always make sure that I'm in charge of that class, or I know how to steer this back towards what I plan to talk about, because, and this is something we were speaking about last week, students will tend to want to do what they like, especially a high level student.
Yeah.
So, and if you are experiencing issues with that, then I can say to my students, you are quite fluent. So I don't want to, my value as a teacher for you is not about just having a casual conversation. I want to challenge you to improve your language and your communication. So that's why, yes, it might not be necessarily always fun talking about this topic because maybe you don't have a lot of knowledge on it or you don't have a place to, but that's the point. That's what I'm here for.
And that's a very good point, Gabriela. Matt, it's important that we go prepared. Now that we're prepared when we go to teach a high-level student. What are some of the advice that you can give other teachers on how to prepare?
I think to be doubly prepared. I mean, look, I think I can speak for all the teachers. You can start on a Monday and you've got a set of activities, but you've got activities on repeat for a few classes during the week. By the Friday, you've got those activities waxed because you know how
Totally.
those work. You kind of get the feeling, or what the questions that are going to be asked, and you can kind of take that activity and by the Friday you're testing students in a different way that you would on a Monday, for example.
Totally.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good point, yeah, and I think like kind of going on from what Gabriela was saying, I think it's very easy for teachers to fall into the trap of like, oh, I have a P5 class, this is going to be easy, I don't have to prepare, I'm just going to go and have a chat, and that's completely kind of the wrong attitude to have. You need to be exactly. You need to be doubly prepared. You need to be on the ball, and it's not just a case of going having a chat, with someone.
And you need to be prepared to personalize activities too. Whether the topic is not interested or not relevant, so okay, you have to have something on your back, like okay, now we are going to this website and we're going to discuss this point, right? So it's good to use add button to activities, or at least have something else just in case you run out of activities, right?
I mean, yeah, we have tools. Now we have the tools we have. We have other tools that we can use.
I mean, we've got all the system that we can use,
right.
a bank of millions of activities that we can use, and then obviously the internet and the unlimited resources. Really,
right. And sometimes you find yourself that as you're leading that class, perhaps you need something from the internet that you can use.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I mean it's kind of it, but I just had a quick one about the slang. How much slang do you guys introduce? You mentioned Annie mentioned slang, and it's something that I think lots of my students enjoy having a bit of slang. But I mean, do you guys just keep it to kind of gonna, wanna, shoulda, and all that, or how much slang? I mean, Graham, do you go and introduce a lot of Scottish slang to your students?
Always. I mean, teaching a couple recently, and we were working on real basic level, and I was just finding that are you a doctor? Are you and it was kind of your basic, a boy holding an apple kind of thing, and I thought this was a bit boring for them because they were real. So I introduced them to some bad words to call each so they could practice saying are, and it was a lot more fun. And I guess colloquial language too, picking up little sayings here and there. And I even teach them Americanisms as well. It's not just Scottish stuff. I teach American.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's a lot of any more questions on your side?
No, that's it really for today.
But as we learned today, we have it's a little bit complicated, right? It's a little
it's not easy.
Challenging.
Like I say, especially I don't want to say for newer teachers, but you do I think we probably all originally when we started out, falling into that trap. Oh yes, I've got a P5 class. This is going to be sweet. This is going to be easy, and it ain't the case.
And after the first class, you feel like you're not teaching
Yeah,
at all.
because I mean, the worst thing that can happen is a student go away and think, well, what was the point of that? Oh, I've taken absolutely nothing
And I
away.
paid for
Yes,
that.
I've had a wonderful chat, but what have I learned? You know, and I paid for it. Like,
Right. I think that's the worst feedback that you can get.
yeah. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know? That's the worst feedback.
Yeah.
You feel it. It's not just they have to tell you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
you feel that you're underperforming.
Yeah.
But listen, thank you guys for joining
Cheers.
us.
Thank you.
Thank
This topic will be talked for a long time. We have more information on this, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, we guys will see you next week. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Cheers. See you later, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.